Hello, in today's video, if you're watching this in a car or a vehicle or anything moving like that, watch it later. Watch it later, okay? Go do whatever you gotta do if you're doing something right now, whether it be chores or whatever you gotta do. Alright? I hope you can. So put this on your watch later or whatever, and see you later. But for those who are staying and don't have chores or sleeping or things you gotta do, like, I don't know, perhaps driving, go do that. Anyway, for those who don't have to, stay. Alright, now that I made that clear, let's just talk about whatever. There are so many things I could talk about, and there's so many things that I probably won't bring up at all in this video, but I'm just gonna talk about, whatever comes to my mind. So I'm gonna give it a little bit of a sync so that way you can think your thoughts a little. Alright, so I'll give you a little bit of a second. Do you have enough time to think about all of this? I certainly hope so. Alright, let's get into it. I don't know. I haven't watched a lot of movies or TV shows lately. There isn't anything going on big in video gaming, at least not for me anyway. I don't know. And there has been stuff going on with the internet or whatever, but I don't always try to constantly get into drama. But, there is the culture wars or whatever. But I'm not, sometimes I do get involved because I have a worldview and sometimes I like to spread it. But, even with that, you do have to realize that, not everybody's gonna agree, obviously, and you don't want to get too into the culture wars. Just enough where you can spread your message and actually get it out there to the point where they don't just want to get interested or just want to believe it, but want to spread those beliefs themselves, not just, Marxism or socialism or communism. I'm not into that stuff. I'm more to libertarian. I'm more to... Well, not necessarily ANCAP, because that's a little too much for me, but just like center-leaning libertarian, that kind of thing. And by center, I do think that the state is a problem for everything, because they try to blame, capitalism did this, capitalism did that, yada yada yada. Not really. Not really. Yeah, there have been systems affected by capitalism, but those systems were because of the state, not necessarily capitalism itself. It was state-controlled capitalism. It wasn't capitalism at its finest. That kind of thing. If it was, America would probably not need to exist or want to exist, because you would just have the capitalism, But one of the biggest problems is people get afraid, and because of stuff like AI, it basically makes it very hard for inventors to actually invent new revolutionary stuff that isn't just something that's slightly different this time, or if it is different, it's it's the one nicky knacker. This is the Dewey machine that does this specific thing. Like, I get that that's what inventors do. They invent things like that. But it's like, and I'm not discrediting anybody who does that. That can actually change a lot. And inventors just invent things that you probably didn't even realize that at some point was invented, or it was invented by an individual. That kind of thing. There are many, 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 many inventions. Like the light bulb, pretty much any vehicle. There's the computer, the device that I'm using to talk to you right now, this shirt at some point in history, the numbers that are used to record this, in this specific way, and the way that it's made to record, that had to be invented at some point in history, But when I'm talking revolutionary inventions, I'm talking like where like you go through a huge leap, where you go from like, I don't know, 144p to 30k, like a big leap like that. Like you don't really see that anymore. But that's probably because it's gotten so micro invented and it's gotten so slower because people are just so used to what they have that inventions, like I think there was like a time where inventors were just constantly inventing stuff, but now it's just like a lot slower, a lot slower than it ever has been. But I'll give it, I want to say till 2055, and something maybe will happen there, but if I'm being realistic, something isn't really going to get too particularly spicy until at least until 2130 or 2136, because at least in that time period, that time frame, there will be enough time, literally, to actually start constantly inventing that kind of stuff. We're in the early stages of what could be another golden age, and we're already in the golden age of this particular century, but I mean like the next golden age, at least in terms of inventing stuff specifically. There's a lot of inventions. In fact, I know relatives who are inventors, sort of, but that's something that would be discovered later. By the way, my grandpa, he's an inventor. He invented some electric bullshit that's exclusive to him, because he's a smart ass. He can do that. And when you're a smart ass, smart people stuff. He's lucky for somebody of his generation, because there's not a lot of people who can actually get to a smartass from his generation, because he's a baby boomer, he's not a rich guy, but he just has enough money to make it in his day to day, I can't blame him. He's still alive, he's getting older every day. Just like how I'm getting older, how you're getting older every day. I don't know, man. I have things I gotta do. I like it, but I'm gonna stay here for a while, maybe an hour or so, for however long, and I just want to talk, I want to get a wife one day, and I hate to get all linguistically graphic, but I want to make babies with her, you know? Not just for the sexual pleasure of doing so, but because I can be like, you know what? Maybe my cum offspring, because I guess like they don't exist yet, so I'm just gonna go with that for now. But obviously, I'm just gonna be calling them babies and kids because if I do get them, because obviously I don't think calling them sperm offspring is exactly the best term to use. But anyway, I would like to be a father, you know, one day. Be a husband, be a father, live in my own place. Ideally, that own place being where I grew up, you know? The house I was raised in, for the most part, you know? Because wouldn't you, if you could live in an ideal world with the place that you're actually from, you know? I don't know, man. That's how I would have it, but I don't know. I don't know about you, but that's just how I would have it. But there's a lot of things out there. Hunting, fishing, I don't know, law-abiding citizen, words in English language form, I don't know. I don't have a lot to think about. And there's the housing crisis, there's the unemployment crisis, there's the untrained crisis, you know, there's the uneducated crisis. But the problem with the uneducated is that we don't just have a lot of people that are becoming uneducated. We also have a system where even if you are educated, you still become a failure because then you just become like a political nut job, you know, instead of actually learning for once, you know, that kind of thing. Because when you become a political nut job, you're probably, you could be educated, you could be well read, you could be very, very good at reading, like to a college grade level, reading and writing or something. But it's like, what's the fucking point if you, yes, you, are not exactly the best of people, you know? Because if you make it all about others too much, you start to neglect yourself. But if you make yourself, you know, the only thing that matters all the time, then you start to love yourself too much and neglect everybody else. You know? So you have to find a balance specific to you. You know, find a what works specifically for you. You might have to be a little bit more on that end or a little bit more on this end. But, you know, not everything's about you. Because that's the bigger one. That's the bigger one. The ego is the bigger one. But it doesn't necessarily mean that other people can't be assholes. Okay? I can be an asshole. You can be an asshole. Alright? If I'm capable of doing it, I know you're capable of doing it. Doesn't necessarily mean that we should. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that you're incapable of it. Everybody's capable of it. You know, even Jesus Christ was capable of being an asshole. You know? And maybe he was. I don't know. I can't say. Wasn't there. So, I can't say, oh yes, he was the ancient equivalent of an asshole. You know? But anyway. There are a lot of problems in this world. and going back onto the whole having a wife and kids and stuff. When I watch a lot of older TV shows and I see like actual attractive women, not just the ones in the modern TV shows where they all just basically look the same to a certain extent, or they all just look like a certain specific way, because I don't know why TV shows do that now. Not every single TV show, but I mean like certain types of Hollywood TV shows, if you know what I mean. But mostly Hollywood, so that's why I don't really focus on Hollywood anymore. And that's why I don't use, live studio audience sitcoms. I don't like that kind of stuff. Maybe with the exception of Welcome Back, Kotter. That comes from an era I wasn't even alive for. But, that comes from an age that I wasn't alive for. But, it has that kind of humor of, live studio audience. It's actually funny, at least for me, and blueberries and mustard. If you don't get that reference, I can't blame you. It is from a long time ago. And I don't know. Welcome back. You just don't really have shows like that. But it makes sense because that was in the 1970s. And there was the 80s, and then there was the 90s, and there was the 2000s, and there was the 2010s, and then there was the 2020s. And then eventually, long after some lore and long after some history, came your time. Whenever you're watching this, I have no idea when you're watching this. You could be watching this in a year that I didn't even know could exist. So, I don't know. I really don't. Boy, there's just so much difference from back then to now to your present that I probably said things you don't understand. In fact, I don't even know if you can speak my language. Excuse me. So, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I don't know. I really don't. The internet has really consumed everything. Remember when being offline was just a part of your day-to-day life and feel like you had the urge to be online every day? If you don't know what that feeling is like, especially if you're somebody who never got a chance to, you can always learn what that's like. You can always have that experience of being offline. But on the other hand, there were some people that are like, I wish they were online more. But you can't exactly control that. Being in real life, actual in real life, which is the one I'm trying to recommend, which is being offline in general, then you get to do stuff that you can't exactly do online. Now, don't get me wrong, there are things you can do online that you definitely can't really do on in real life. Like for example, I don't think most people are in an Instagram comment section in real life, or really anyone, because like who the fuck does that? That kind of thing. Like, don't get me wrong, you can have an Instagram comment section, you can have a YouTube comment section, but it's like, wouldn't you rather watch the whole video before you directly look at the comment section? Because I know there are a lot of people who are like, they'll just turn on a video and instantly look at the comment section without even thinking about it. Like, they'll instantly start looking at the comments as the video is going. And I get that if it's like a super long video, like a 10-hour video or something, then yeah, I can get that. But if it's something like an hour or less, then maybe not, you know? That kind of thing. But it's just these people have this mentality and this idea that everybody except me are all side character, nobody NPCs, and I'm the true main character. Like, no, you're not. Because the main character, first of all, probably doesn't even know they're the main character right now. You know, I could be the main character, but guess what? I don't think I am. You know? I don't think you are either. You know? Who knows? Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe I could be the main character. But even if I was, why would I care? Because the main character doesn't really refer to themselves as the main character. Maybe they could become conscious enough to be aware of it. But it's like, even if I was aware of it, even if I did know I was the true, you know, player, main character, main story person, even if that's the actual case, the literal case, the literal physical case, I would not care too much, you know, because you gotta keep a low profile. You gotta keep people thinking you're an NPC as well, because it's like, or at least just a normie, because at least just enough to not really blow your cover, if you will. Because if I was the main character, that's what I would do. Because I don't wanna be in a position where it's like, oh, you're the main character now, so we're gonna put you in an unnecessary main quest. You know, that kind of thing. And I know I'm using video game terms, but that's what a lot of people use nowadays. You know, video game terms, because they ran out of movie terms, I guess. Movie and TV show terms. And I think I said this earlier, but yeah, there are just a lot of old movies and TV shows that are just like, damn, man, I missed out on quite a bit, at least in terms of attractive women. Or at least for me, anyway. But yeah, that's probably wasn't the case in real life. I don't know, I wasn't alive in the early 2000s. I was born in 2006. Just for context. You know? That's when I was born. 2006. You know what happened in 2006? The first Cars movie. You know? That's how old I am. That's how freaking old I am. You know? I was so old. I'm so old. I'm old enough that it was like a little under 3 years by the time Michael Jackson died. You know? Because that's where I am. And if you're wondering, he died on, I think it was June 24th? Or January 24th? 25th? Wait. Yeah, from what I'm told, it's like June 25th or something like that. 2009. It was in 2009. Okay? He died in 2009, so about 3 years or so. That kind of thing. And, if you want to be specific, September 22nd, 2006. Now, I was born. Alright, so you can add that to the digits. Alright? And another big shocker. Guy is born in September. Ooh. Ooh. Such a shocker. September 16th looking ass. February 23rd looking ass. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I don't know. But there's every single day of the calendar. But look. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. What if you're born on February 29th of a particular year, and that's the one where the leap year cuts off most years, so you're going to get 28 only in that calendar, that specific month. So because of it, you tend to, if you're born on that date, not have your birthday, so to speak. But I guess, I don't know, maybe technically March 1st can be your birthday, but so I guess in March 1st you can have like the double birthday, where it's like somebody who was actually born on March 1st and somebody who was born on February 29th of whatever year. Then you get to do some stuff, some special stuff. And yeah. And if you're wondering, there is no leap year in 2100. Okay? It's not a leap year for some reason. It really confuses a lot of people, and it confuses me too, the way that calendar works. Like, why not just keep it as 366 days a year, make it a leap year every year, Because at least then it would kind of make sense. You know what I mean? Because at least then you would have all the days every year. But yeah, I guess we do kind of need to upgrade the calendar. But until we do, we're just stuck with the Gregorian calendar, the one we got, And man, oh man. I don't really like the calendar too much, the Gregorian calendar, because there's 7 days in a week, right? 7 days. And for most people, their week starts on a Monday and ends on a Sunday. Okay? So, if that's how weeks work, why can't it be like, the week starts on a Friday and ends on a Friday, and it starts on a Friday, ends on a Friday. I don't know how to explain it, like same day week. Why isn't that a thing? Why do we have a bunch of different time zones? We could have just had one time zone, but I guess to be fair, people do wake up at different times and stuff like that. So it's like I can see potential of like why they would do that, because people want it to be the time that it wants it to be. And if you ask me, the time zone should be what gives you the most long-term benefits in the extreme long term. When you have a time zone, what will give you the most long-term benefits from having that? But I don't know. And then there's also a time change, where every couple of months or so, they change the clocks for some reason. And it doesn't really make any sense because, like, why would you change the clock if in today's world it wouldn't make much sense? Because now, like, people would just wake up at the same day every day, you know? But obviously, in Thomas Jefferson's time, they didn't really have this, so, you know, obviously, how should I say, are not great, okay? Anyway, what can I remember? What can I remember? I remember, I remember that Winnie the Pooh is not Chinese, okay? He's not Chinese. I can prove it to you. He may be yellow, but he also wears red, okay? And, Oh. Crazy. Ain't it? Ooh. Whatever, man. I'm out of here. So, yeah. Bye.